الله ورفع بعدهم درجات. وآتينا عيسى بن مريم البينات وأيدناه بروح القدوس. ولو شاء الله ما قتتل الذين من بعدهم من بعد ما جعثم البينات ولكن اختلفوا فمنهم من آمن ومنهم من كفر. ولو شاء الله ما قتتلوا ولكن الله يفعل ما يريد. يا أيها الذين آمنوا أنفقوا مما رزقناكم من قبل أن يأتي يوم لا بيع فيه ولا خلة ولا شفعة والكافرون هم الظالمون. الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نعوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض. من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء. وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يعوضه حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم. لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين الرشد من الغي. فمن يكفر بالطاغوت ويؤمن بالله فقد استمسك بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله سميع عليم. الله ولي الذين آمنوا يخرجهم من الظلمات إلى النور والذين كفروا أولياؤهم الطاغوت يخرجونهم من النور إلى ظلمات أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. ألم تر إلى الذي حج إبراهيم في ربه أن أعطاه الله الملك إذ قال إبراهيم ربي الذي يحيي ويميت قال أن أحيي وأميت قال إبراهيم فإن الله يأتي بالشمس من المشرق فأت بها من المغرب فبهيط الذي كفر والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. أو كالذي مر على قريات وهي خاويات على عروشها قال أنا يحيي هذه الله بعد موتها فأماته الله 100 عام ثم بعثه قال كم لبثت قال لبثت يوما أو بعد يوم قال بل لبثت 100 عام فانظر إلى طعامك وشرابك لم يتسنه وانظر إلى حمارك ولنجعلك آيات للناس وانظر إلى عظام كيف ننشزها ثم نكسها لحما فلما تبين له قال أعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير. وإذ قال إبراهيم رب أرني كيف تحيي الموتى قال أولم تؤمن قال بلى ولكن ليطمئن قلبي قال فخذ 4 من الطير فصرهن إليك ثم اجعل كل جبل منهن جزعا ثم دحن ياتناك سأيا ولم أن الله عزيز حكيم. صلوات.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
اقربا کٹ گئے جب شاہ کے اقربا کٹ گئے جب شاہ کے باری اور عدم چلنے کی اس شاہ نے کی تیاری خیمے کا پردہ اٹھا زین اللبا ایک باری خیمے کا پردہ اٹھا زین اللبا ایک باری دیکھ مقتل کی طرف کرنے لگے یوں زاری خلد کے کوچ میں ہم کو نہیں بلواتے ہو خلد کے کوچ میں ہم کو نہیں بلواتے ہو قافلے والوں ہمیں چھوڑے چلے جاتے ہو ہائے شہ کا نہ رہا کوئی بھی یاور باقی نہ علمدار رہے اور نہ لشکر باقی نہ رہے قاسم جرار نہ اکبر باقی ہیں فقط سبت نبی کا سر انور باقی ہم تو باقی ہیں غم و رنج اٹھانے کے لیے موت نے چھوڑا ہمیں اشک بہانے کے لیے ہائے شبیر کے مرنے کی ہے اب تیاری زخم پر زخم لگے ہیں تن شہ پر کاری، بھوک میں پیاس میں غش کھاتے ہیں 100 باری، بیچ میں ابن علی گرد کھڑے ہیں ناری، اپنے بیماری سے شرمندہ پسر ہوتا ہے، قتل اب سامنے بیٹے کے پدر ہوتا ہے، ہائے بابا کو میرے کوئی بچا لے آ کر، پھیر دلا کے گلے پر میرے کوئی خنجر، بعد بابا کے پسر کا نہیں جینا بہتر، باپ تو قتل ہو جیتا رہے یہ خستہ جگر، اہل بیت نبوی پر یہ جفائیں ہوں گی، بلوائے عام میں سر پر نہ ردائیں ہوں گی، اقربا کٹ گئے جب شاہ کے باری صلوات علیہ۔
صلوا علی محمد وآل محمد، اللهم صل علی محمد وآل محمد۔
پھر سے صلوات، صلی علی محمد وآل محمد۔ I only have a few minutes inshallah. تھا یہ بانوں کا بیان، کس کو دوں اب لوریاں، ڈھونڈتی پھرتی ہے مادر، ہے میرا اصغر کہاں، تیرا جھولا جل گیا اے میرے تشنا دہاں، ڈھونڈتی پھرتی ہے مادر، ہے میرا اصغر کہاں، تھا یہ بانوں کا بیان، کس کو دوں اب لوریاں، ڈھونڈتی پھرتی ہے مادر، ہے میرا اصغر کہاں، خون بھرا کرتا تیرا ہائے وہ بھی چھن گیا، خون بھرا کرتا تیرا ہائے وہ بھی چھن گیا، اب جیوں کس کے سہارے، پاس میرے کیا رہا، زندگی ہے رائگاں، عمر بھر ہوں نوحہ خواں، ڈھونڈتی پھرتی ہے مادر، है मेरा असगर कहाँ था ये बानों का बयां किसको दूं अब लोरियां ढूंढती फिरती है मादर है मेरा असगर कहाँ आवाज़ बुलंद सलावत
For the hastening of his reappearance, the avenger of Karbala, recite the loudest salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farjuhum. Two poems in the time. The first in honor of the hands that never gave allegiance and to Karbala's timeless stand. These hands are not given, but ask of them and they give so freely. Flow with love, flow with passion, for these hands give alms whilst in divine exhortation. These hands speak, behead us, yet our stand cannot be diminished. For here is a call that can never be extinguished. For they are the lights in the darkness, shine in the depths of solitude, find solace with the divine. For these hands, I swear, they've crafted the words on the divine throne itself, as though these hands have to this land seed sown and crops spelt. Here are hands that stretch to the torn night sky and pray. And at the break of dawn, these hands will break bread with the deprived. These hands that clasp onto the hand of the divine, who respond to God's request and give without any sign, they are hidden. And the divine calls in an instant. Return to me in a state you are content. Hands that can return a setting soon, a sun, and split a wholesome moon, that shake when they are in prayer and tremble in ablution. These hands are not symbols then, but are revolutionary stances. Their tongues will still testify, be their heads upon lances. Here are hands that rap against flags of truth that flutter, that clasp carriers bursting at the seams for throats that crave water. Here are hands that will be severed, but hands that never give in to dishonor. Hands that liberate unshackled and give flight. How do severed heads and broken arms mend broken souls and lives? And yet, after everything they tried, from severing two arms of Abbas, still they could not get one hand to pledge for them. Hands then that display about bravery, that speak about victory. These hands that defend, these hands that have felt split open necks of children slaughtered, of final farewells with orphan daughters. These hands that have buried many times over, that have dug into sands and made coffins for 6-month-old babies slaughtered, that have tried to cover fountains of blood that splutter from youthful chests and at the bequest of brothers. These hands that move blood from eyes so a lover can see his beloved for the last time. Here is the hand which extends to enemies' thirst, who give water to him, and later who he gives water to those that later to his mother curse, and will kill and demand the ring from his finger. These hands with severed fingers oppression withstand, and here are small hands that curl against their faces from the advances of men. hands that cover ears, bloodied and beaten, hands that have protected and hands are shackled, hands that are in chains and hands that beg their uncle not to leave. And here is a baby's hands that coo for thirst. Women's hands that have made men's kingdoms quiver, that demand with eloquence their rights once over, that shatter falsehood. These hands, they have stitched banners in the camps of despair, and hands that only wept in the silence of the night prayer. For each gesture is a testament to the legacy they weave of Hussein's stand for truth and justice till the end we believe. Here is Zainab, the hands of resilience, a phoenix in flight, her spirit unbroken in the treacherous night. Her hands are torches against the tyrant storm. She obliterates falsehood in her revolutionary form. Zainab's hands are like silken threads in the loom, weaving tales of valors from the thread of Hussein's tomb. Her hands are wings that fly for the oppressed, and with every word spoken, the truth is confessed. And one hand raised commands the winds to stop, for when she will speak, blood will bleed from rock, and they mock no longer to hear her eloquence. Her mission is thus: his hand Hussein never gave, and our hands are such that they stand as a testament that Karbala is alive through the hands that never gave allegiance to tyranny's side. And so they clung to supplication, drowned in pain, and they thank God for beauty in treacherous slaughter. These hands, they will never give in to injustice and oppression. These hands, they can never give in to unjustly succession, for oppress them as you wish, but they still will rise. I see them like in the desert of Ghadir. They clasp and shine like upon an alam. They still rise and flutter with a proclamation. They would rather be cut than to bow to humiliation. And I see them rise above flags and domes, and in our mother's eyes I see them in the chant of lovers, in the heartbroken cries. These hands on chests, and these hands raised to the sky and exclaim, his hand, his hand, his hand it remains. They slaughtered his head, but his hand he never gave. Salawat. A poem dedicated to mothers and the mothers of Karbala. We ask for forgiveness of Sayyidah Zahra that we recite such of the tragedy that befalls her and her children on this night and in the day. My mother used to tell me a mother has two hearts. One is her own, the other is the flesh she parts in the form of her children. So when he sent forth his mercy, he created the mother. Her womb was the haven, and yet her prayers till the end have pushed forth passages untraversable. So I ask you, what does a mother do when she can no longer quench her child's thirst? When she sees her children weep, it's as though her heart will burst. I ask the mothers, can you bear the weight of their cries? And she will respond, every part of me trembles, my soul and my eyes. My hands were once rivers, now they feel dried like cracked earth. Her eyes become twin moons that will sink into the earth. Her spirit is vast, so she does not surface the pain. For the mother is the anchor of the hope to her child. She feels each tear as though it is a tide carving deep. But then what of those mothers that tie the knot of martyrdom upon the heads of their children, that give them to their Lord as they know they were from him? And those mothers that on the plains of deserted lands draw lines in burning sands, where thirst grips their throats and they lullabies to their children. into their laps as their children listen, and they will not sleep, because one part of them is the mother of their children, and the other part is the mothers of the eternal revolution. Here is Ramla as she prepares Qasim in the night. My son, your uncle is alone, and remember, you are Hassan in Syed. So you fight not like a young cub in these plains. Be the lion of Hassan as you fight through the day. Maybe hearing this from the other tent, Layla to Akbar embraced, my son, my beloved, I will forever remember your face. And she kisses the neck upon his chest. Her words she read, may every wound be counted and your blood for your father bled. And here is Zainab, tying her bird's birth to the rope of God, sending them to their salvation. But strong is she. But I ask, doesn't Zainab's heart bleed? As she sends them into battle, she falls into prostration, and the ground then witnesses her tears and supplication. And if Hussein's blood turned Karbala into divine salvation, I wonder, was it mixed with the tears of Zainab, who thanked and praised her Lord for the sons that she reared to be killed in the cause of her brother revered? And when every son came back a martyr into the tents, Zainab wept with their mothers, and alone she laments. But here return two bodies, their mother is not by their side. So Hussein weeps over two chests, as between them he lies. Zainab remains in sujood and is subdued to the most great, thanking her Lord for her son's noble fate. But her tears will be hed as far more trials will be begot. For she is the mother for the mothers that children lost. So until Medina, my sons, your mother you will have to forgive. For until then in your mourning I will not sit, and at the morning break I will recall how you called. I will mourn you in the silence of our home, by the empty doors and your empty beds. I will mourn you, my loves, and countless tears I will shed. But one mother sits, her hands cradling an empty embrace, as she sits burning in the sun as it casts upon her face. The night before she whispers into a 6-month-old ear, my son, your blood will dye your father's beard. No milk I can give to your thirsty, fragile lips. So Rabab on that night his neck she kissed, and on the day that rose where the sun blazed, she offered her son with the hope to be quenched. As though time stops as the arrow flies, I wonder, was it Rabab's cry that echoed to the skies as the three-pronged arrow sheared his neck, one prong for his thirst and his small veins that bled, the other for Hussein as it ruptures his chest. But it tore the heart of Rabab and left this mother for dead, a walking corpse she has become. So I ask, what do you call a mother who no longer cradles her son? And what do you call her arms that can no longer embrace? So she will sit in the blazing heat, and her face stares only at the earth. Is this how they quenched my baby's thirst? But no mother will be recounted without our mother indeed. There is one who watched with the daughters of Ali when on the night before descends from heaven to clean, where his body will rest and his chest that will bleed, where his pieces will be torn to utter shreds, sits the mother of Hussein. As tears she wept, as though her eyes are cooling the grounds that burn, where her son will be martyred in her lap. So she beckons, she screams a roar as though it's a thunderous clap. Who left him for dead with a broken back, who severed his neck and raises his head to the sky. I will count all your wounds, and with my tears make you a balm. So rest now, Hussein, in your mother's arms, O my son who stands alone. Just open those eyes to see who told you you were ghareeb, for your mother will never leave, and I will clear every broken arrow, and I will weep every wound and pain, for your mother will always stay with you, my beloved son Hussein. Salawat.
For all of our poets from our community and from the communities in the global Shia community, recite aloud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. The ayat for today were the ayat of Ayatul Kursi. We wrapped up our discussion last night regarding the topic of Iman, and we said that Iman is a concept that is not merely understood intellectually, nor does it merely reside in the heart, but rather it brings about a sense of holistic moral duty that affects every single facet of one's life. In today's discussion with regards to the ayats that were mentioned from Surah Al-Baqarah, we want to ask, so then what duty does the understanding of Tawheed bring for a muwahhid? Now, as Syed Zeshum rightfully pointed out on his first lecture in this lecture series, I don't want to come and translate the word Tawheed to monotheism. And for what reason? Because when we choose our words, we create barriers with the complexity of the words that we choose. And therefore, when we use words like monotheism, we take the foundation and the complete backbone of our faith and reduce it to some abstract concept that I'm not able to understand. And therefore, you'll see people say, Maulana, speak about the various events that occurred in the lives of the Ahlul Bayt, and speak about how Amir al-Mu'mineen displayed his heroics, and speak about his courage, and speak about his bravery. Well, these are tiny understandings and tiny concepts that I'm able to swallow, and therefore it makes sense that I would like to hear about them. But no one comes and says, come speak about Tawheed, because what is monotheism? When it's the foundation of my religion, it becomes of the utmost importance for me to understand what it means to have a worldview that is tawheedi. We say that any and every notion or belief that is in contradiction to our foundation, the foundation of our faith, is in complete contradiction to what we believe in its totality. And therefore, in these nights, a lot of people had various questions. They would say, tell me about how I know my istighfar is accepted, and tell me how I can pray a better prayer, etc. But to be honest, the bulk of the questions that I received in the past week alone have by far been, am I allowed to say Ya Ali Madad? Can I say Ya Abbas or Zuqna? Am I allowed to say these things or no? And so a very clear bottom line to answer all of these questions is quite simple. Any belief that separates any entity from Allah, meaning there is an entity that is independent of Allah and is not rooted in Allah and doesn't derive its power from Allah nor its existence from Allah, is not a Tawheedi belief, and therefore is not Islamic at its core. Now, my dear brothers and sisters, to wrap up, I do not want to take away time from Syed Zeshum's lecture on this Shab of Ashura. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in these ayat of Kursi that those who are the true monotheists and muwahhideen are those who firstly yakfur bit-taghut and then yu'min billah. Sisters and brothers, in order for us to identify the Tawheedi path and which path it is that Allah wants us to tread upon, you have to name who it is that we are rejecting. There were 360 idols in the Kaaba, and the Holy Prophet does not return to Mecca and say, let them sit in the Kaaba while we recognize the untangible and immaterial God. He says, first, Ya Ali, sit on my shoulders and break all 360 of them, and then let them utter La ilaha illallah. The idols of today are not made of stone, my sisters and brothers. The idols of today, are they anything else except for the ideology of the liberal democracy that's placed upon us by the American demagogues and hegemons that control us? Until you name the taghut, how will you be able to utter the kalima of La ilaha illallah? Inshallah, in our last discussion, which will be not tomorrow but the day after, we'll wrap up our discussion on Tawheed. Inshallah, you and I have benefited from these nights of Aza and have become closer to the Quran and closer to the tafasir of the Quran. Inshallah, we live a life of Tawheed with the barakah of salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. Just a reminder that we have Syed Zeshum until Wednesday, so day after tomorrow. Tomorrow is obviously the day of Ashura, so he'll be reciting Masaib, and then he'll finish off his lecture series on Wednesday, inshallah. Mu'mineen, Mahdi's goal for this Ashura was to raise $10,000, and we're very, very close to that goal. We've raised around $9,000 so far. We ask you to help us reach that goal, inshallah. Today is the day of Ali al-Asghar, the baby, Babul Hawaij, and in his name we ask you to donate towards Mahdi so we can continue supplying you guys with these majalis, with the sabils outside, with these discussions. So please, we're very close to our goal. Please help us reach it, inshallah. There's a request for Fatiha for tonight's sponsors, Marhumeen. Brother Ziaul Hassan, Riyazul Hassan, Sayyida Begum, Nasir Ali, Zahira, Shahnaz Begum, the Marhumeen of the Mirza family, as well as our Sayyid Asad Jafri. So Al-Fatiha. As we invite up the Sayyid, let's all recite 3 loud salawat and let's all move forward, inshallah. Bismillah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد آل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين روحي وأرواحنا نترى بمقدم الفداء فقد قال الله في كتابه المجيد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم تسبح له السماوات السبع والأرض ومن فيهن وإن من شيء إلا يسبح بحمده ولكن لا تفقهون تسبيحهم إنه كان حليما غفورا صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد. For the hastening of the reappearance of our Imam, please recite the loudest of salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Tonight is a night it's not easy to talk on. It's not easy to move past one's emotions, one's feelings, and to be able to sort of discuss something. Inshallah, we'll try our best to make use of this opportunity. But let's not lose sight. At the end of the day, we're here and gathered, we're mourning, and our hearts should be heavy. And it should not be a night like any other night. It should not be a gathering like any other gathering. It shouldn't be that we can easily smile. It shouldn't be that we can easily think about things that are light, that are entertaining. that are our hobbies, that's our regular life. Let's let the gravity of the situation, of this night, of the events sink in. Let's not move past it too quickly. Let's not brush it aside. Inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the tawfiq of taking advantage of this night and all other nights. Barakat salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. What we've been talking about is the intellect and the ramifications it has on society in a social structure that's built on the true intellect and the true self, and how it would seem to build that kind of society, and what are the barriers that might be preventing us to go on that path. One barrier, almost ironically, is the intellect itself. And it is something that we can see, usually through our, inshallah not within ourselves, but sometimes maybe in the people around us, and then if we look more carefully within ourselves, maybe we'll see shades of it too. We see that if I start to understand things, know things, especially if I'm in an intellectual, so-called intellectual heavy field, where it requires a lot of research, it requires a lot of studies to be able to sort of attain a degree or attain some sort of success within that field, then subconsciously what usually starts happening is that a person starts to think to themselves that whatever my mind tells me, whatever my intellect derives, that is reality. And that stops any future inquiry. It stops progress, it stops revision, it stops reflection. Because the person now sees reality just in the lines of what they've seen. And as I mentioned previously, ironically again, this perhaps happens most often with the people who are in the hard sciences. Ironic, why? Because technically you would think that someone who is examining the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the wonders that they are, would become closer and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But because of how the fields are taught, how the environment that they're in, the idea is almost inculcated within people that this world is all that matters, that everything is about this material world. And so the very understanding that the intellect has of this world becomes a barrier for the intellect to go beyond it. And that's something very difficult. It's very difficult if we've reached that point to move beyond it, to break that barrier. Because we're not saying that we have to ignore the sciences, or the sciences are wrong or bad or anything like that. But they have to be put in perspective. Everything has to be put in its proper framework. If it's put outside of it, in the wrong place, right, then it starts a delusion, an illusion that clouds our eyes. The verse that I quoted in the beginning says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم تسبح له السماوات السبع والأرض وما فيهن ومن فيهن. Says that, and it glorifies Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the seven heavens and the earth and everything that is within it. And emphasizing after, it says, وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ, there's nothing whatsoever that exists except إِلَّا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ, right, that is doing the tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is doing the glorification of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِيحَهُمْ. The only problem is that we can't perceive it, we can't understand it, we can't grasp that this is what's happening. The intellect has this level of realization. That's what we're striving for. seeing the world in the sense that everything is doing the tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a famous story, right? A lot of people, when they think of the great scholar Syed, they think of him in terms of fiqh, strictly in his jurisprudence and usul and these things. But in his early years, as being a student in Najaf, he was a close student of Ayatollah Qadi Tabatabai, who was an arif, a great mystic. It's related by Ayatollah Shubairi Zanjani, the story, that he doesn't even give a source for the story, because he says it's so well known in Najaf. If you ask anybody about this, they'll say yes. This is how Sayyid Khui was. It's not needed to give any source, which is surprising for someone like Ayatollah Shubairi Zanjani. I'll just give just some small details. It's someone who's very, very particular about having a source for everything is being said. But in this particular story, he says, I don't need to say anything because it's so well known. Everyone knows it. They said that Sayyid Khui, at a particular time in this training, he would see a cat jumping from one wall to another. And not only would he, by witnessing that, he would be hearing the cat doing the tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he would hear the jump of the cat doing the tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, I have no clue what that means. I have absolutely no clue what that means. Right? I'm admitting it. Right? What that means, I have absolutely no clue. But that means there's layers to this world. Right? There's things happening beyond our eyes, what our eyes can perceive. That's what we're aiming for. If we lose sight of that there's deeper meanings, a deeper reality, then we lose sight of what is actually real. Because ourselves, our true self, is part of that deeper reality. And so if we cut off the whole world from that, we also cut off ourselves from it. And what happens when we cut ourselves from it is that I start to think to myself, I'm the one who understands this field. I'm an expert in this field. I have this great intellect. I'm, a researcher. I'm an innovator. I'm a entrepreneur, whatever it is. And therefore now I have the ability to mandate what is good and what is bad. Everything has to be made sense to me. I need to be explained whether this particular act, why this is being told for me to do by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If He doesn't explain it to me, if He doesn't satisfy me about why I should be doing it, I'm not going to do it. It doesn't tell me why exactly I'm praying 5 times a day, I'm not going to do it. It doesn't tell me why I should wear hijab, I'm not going to do it. That's how we start to think. The whole point of having a master is to submit. It's sufficient for us to know that the ahkam, that the lines, the direction is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has our best interest in heart. We don't need any other reasoning to move forward. I'm not saying that we can't ask about the wisdoms of things. No, we can. But we don't need it to then act. It's not that it has to make sense to me to then be able to do it. It's not about it making sense. It's about it coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and me being the slave of Allah. My understanding is irrelevant to that picture. In fact, you might even be able to claim that part of this test is not knowing the wisdom and still having to submit. So says that, well, I've always heard that Islam it's a religion of the intellect. That sounds like blind following. Blind following is bad. It's against the intellect. That's not blind following. Blind following would be that some random person tells me to do something and I do it without knowing who that is, without knowing having any relevance or relation to that person and why they said it. In this scenario, we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We've proven Him to ourselves. We believe in Him. And we know that this thing has come from Him and He's directing us in this direction. We might not know why He's told us to do something, but we know that He has told us to do it. So it's not blind following. It's following under the heading that this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from me. Again, our difficulty in reaching that is this arrogance that's been caused within ourselves by this idea that we can make sense of everything. And we have to break that. Realize that no, there's a lot of things that we can't understand. There's a lot of things that are beyond our understanding. Okay? Just look at the Quran. Right? The huruf muqatta'a. Okay? The word, those letters that come in the beginning of a few of the surah. Right? Like, Surah Baqarah, Alif Lam Mim. Right? What does that mean? Don't know. Why is it there in a book of guidance if nobody knows what it means? Well, perhaps that's the point. Perhaps it's the point to show us that there are things beyond our understanding. Things are there, but they're beyond us. It's like the pinnacle of human arrogance to think that us, a minuscule speck in the cosmos, is able to comprehend everything, to be able to see the world from God's eyes. It's not possible. That doesn't curtail our struggle and endeavors. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't push ourselves to know more and more. No. All it means is that I'm always going to submit in front of Allah. No matter where I reach, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, the connection that we see between this and the societal sort of building of the intellect is that sometimes when we look at pressures and societal pressures that occur, peer pressures that are there, we a lot of times just think about it in terms of actions. What happens, what people are doing. I feel this societal pressure to act in one way and so I'm pushed to do so. Right? I feel embarrassed to pray in front of my friends, so I'm pushed not to pray. I feel embarrassed if I don't have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and so I'm pushed by society to do that. And that is true, right? That societal pressure does exist on that level. But there's a deeper level of societal pressure as well. And that's how to see the world, how to perceive the world. For example, I don't know how it is in Canadian schools, but I'll give an example from my sort of experiences in the United States. So I grew up, again, I think I mentioned before, is that I went through public school, right? And barely, and especially in the younger years, probably no Muslim. Maybe when I was in a high school, maybe there's a couple of Muslims in my school. Right? And so very, very within a public school system, that kind of environment, completely American environment. And I'm also from the deep south, right? So very American. We used to, like every morning, the first thing you would do in class would be that you would stand up and pledge allegiance to the flag. Right? Every single day. Right? You would have this as almost like a religious practice. It wasn't taught to us as a religious thing, that this is something that you should do, it's something that you have to believe in. But it was done from such a young age that it became almost ingrained within people's psyche that this flag and everything that it represents is almost holy in how much you need to respect it. Look at how we treat the concept of democracy. We grow up so much surrounded by the idea of democracy. It's almost become like groundbreaking for someone to question that it might be something good or it might be something bad. Please recite the salawat and move a little bit forward.
All the way to the front, please. We're expecting a big crowd tonight. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now my topic isn't democracy and I don't want to go into it. Right? But just as a caveat, what I'm talking about when I'm mentioning democracy, I'm talking about in terms of theory, not in practice. Meaning that the theory that legitimacy is derived by the votes and the say of the public. That idea, that philosophy, it's for sure wrong. There's no doubt that it's wrong. Legitimacy isn't by people. How do I have any right over you? Why would my vote have any inherent ability to dictate something for you? Legitimacy is derived solely and solely through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So again, not going into that, but just giving examples that there are things that because of societal pressure we're almost brainwashed to believe in. And we never even consider from a neutral standpoint. I mean, there's still, again, I don't know about Canada, but in the United States, there's still ramifications and like leftovers from like the Red Scare after the Cold War. People still have this sort of taboo of talking about communism. Right? That's how heavy the impact is. Crossing generations. And that means something for ourselves. It means that if we want to have a society that's built on Tawheed, then that has to be at the forefront of what I think and how I think. Not just what I do. It's not just about those very outward practices. It's about why I'm doing them. It's how I connect them to a framework that's consistent within myself. It's about seeing myself constantly in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When I'm like that, when I see the world like that, I exert a pressure on the people around me to also see the world like that. The pressure works this way too, in a positive way. If we as a group are all seeing the world in that lens, then it encourages more and more people to see it like that as well. It creates a shift within society. This is where we have to look at Islam in that lens. We have to see it in that lens of being something so comprehensive that nothing escapes its purview. Nothing is outside of its bounds. Now, the actions that come from a society that has this kind of perspective will immediately become something polarizing. If you have principles and abide by principles, you'll see immediately that there will be people who come towards you and there will be people who you push away. And so, if you see within your life that you only have friends, you only have people you get along with, and you don't have anybody that you sort of don't like or that you've been feel distaste for their actions at the very least, then something is probably very wrong. Because it means that at some level, you just become a people pleaser, right? You just want to make everyone happy. But that means you can't live principled. As soon as you have principles, then, well, the people who don't abide by that same principle will feel detached. That's a natural thing. Especially if these principles are fundamental to your life, right? Not tangential, like an unimportant detail. Like, I like spicy food, you like bland food. Fundamental, meaning what is all of my life for? What purpose is it aiming at? What goal am I going to? And so if our actions show that we're just always almost like a chameleon, conforming to every sort of environment we find ourselves in, and that's not living a principled life. That's not living an Islamic life. Look at Imam Ali alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. He had the most ardent lovers, and he also had the most severe enemies and haters. Because they saw within him an uncompromising principle. That's a natural reaction. It's not like he went out and made people love him and went out and made people hate him. It's a natural reaction to a principled life. There's a beautiful, series of lectures, I believe, that were transcribed that Syed Mutahari had written on this topic. I encourage everyone to sort of, I think it's definitely in English, I think it's the polarization around the character of Amir al-Mu'mineen or something to that extent. Something beautiful. It talks about this in more detail. But this is the idea that we have to have within ourselves, that our actions should be such. But these actions that we have, in order for them to be like that, have to be guided and informed by those principles. And the principles are formed on a bedrock of a knowing what is real. From that, priorities come. From that, we understand this is more important, this is less important. This is where I need to prioritize, this is what I can do later. Look at our own lives. If you just think about it yourselves. Where is it that we, in our personal lives, right? Don't have to answer, don't have to say it to anyone, but think about it. Where do I prioritize my efforts? Where do I put in the most efforts in my life? Right? And I'm talking about specifically time-wise. I'm saying, what is the most important things to me by action? Don't give it on the level of oh yes, Islam is the most important thing. No, not on that level. I'm saying by seeing through one's action. Meaning that if push comes to shove, that's what's going to be, done no matter what. For many of us, maybe most of us, it's usually something either to do with school or work. That when push comes to shove, that's what wins out. That wins out over everything. That's prioritized. Why is that? It's because we see it to be more important. So that should immediately tell us there's some inconsistency with the way I'm seeing the world compared to how Islam is telling me to see the world. I'm not saying that the work is unimportant. No, it is. But is it ultimately important? Is it the most important? Of course not. It's not. Where do we spend money? Actually, before we even get to spend money, what do we see as valuable occupations? Right? Where we want our children to be when they grow up. Why has it been such an extreme rarity to find a single parent thinking, you know, it would be great if my child was a teacher? I mean, we all recognize that we need teachers to run society. On top of that, as Muslims, we should definitely recognize that we need good Muslim teachers for our society, for our communities, for our children. Well, a logical extension to that would be then, well, I would want my children to be teachers. If I'm seeing a hole within society that's not being filled, and it's necessary, and it's important, one of the most important things, well then obviously I would want my child to be able to fill that hole. But I don't think I could remember anyone, at least my limited experience, ever saying that I want my child to be a teacher. Maybe a teacher would say that. Right? Anybody else? We recognize on the level that it's needed. It's good. We might even praise someone. But our own children? Why? Because we think something else gets a bit more fame, get more acclaim, is much more respected in the eyes of others, at the very least. And so I start to think like that as well. What about spending money? What are we the most willing to spend our money on? It usually boils down to things that are self-serving. Things that are for ourselves, that we enjoy personally. More shoes, more clothes, more this, more that. Maybe if you guys are at that level, another car, another house, a fancy vacation. I'm not saying those are inherently bad. I'm saying priorities. What about these majalis? Everyone recognizes that it's important. Right? Everyone loves it, wants to be here. You guys are here. Obviously, nobody's forcing you to be here. Well, inshallah, nobody's forcing you to be here. But paying for it? Giving money up for it? And there's two ways of saying it. There's sometimes there's like the fundraiser. And like someone saying, give me money, and then you keep on thinking about it, and you're like, yeah, how am I going to justify this on the Day of Judgment? I feel really embarrassed, and so I'm going to pay. Well, there's another time when you own it. It's yours. When I'm always seeing this majlis as this thing that's run by that center and that I'm just tangentially attached to and just, I'm somewhat attending, then obviously you would never feel this thing of wanting. But when you see it as yours, when you're saying that this is a manifestation of your desire to express your grief for Abu Abdullah Hussein, you don't hesitate. It's immediate. So why don't we? What's stopping us? More difficult decisions. If I have enough money to live in a really well-off part of the city, I have a good house with a backyard and all these things, but I won't be living next to mu'mineen. I won't be living in a place where it'll be easy for me to go to the center, where my children can just walk down next door and there'll be another Muslim that they can go to their house and enjoy the company of the children there. Do I even put those factors into my determination of where I'm going to choose to live? What I'm going to choose to buy as a house? What city I live in? Why is it always that that's like the last thing? I get the job and so I move. I found a great house and so I bought it. But then I realized, well, there's nowhere for my children to go, and so now I have to think, how are they going to get the proper education, Islamic education? How are they going to be brought up? You know, which Maulana can I invite to sort of fix my kids? It doesn't work like that. If the choices we make don't show that priority and that understanding of what's real, then that's what's also going to be transferred down the generations. We can't expect that magically someone can just give a speech and then just flip that on its head, when everything people are experiencing is telling them the opposite. And so we need to be pushing each other on this. We need to be encouraging each other to go further and further on this path. Because again, as individuals, it's really difficult to make a lot of these decisions, to convince ourselves of it. But if it's not just me making it, I know that you're doing it too. It's not just me making that difficult decision and moving to that one place. It's you too. You're doing it too. Then it becomes automatically, infinitely easier to make that decision. Because I have that support. But a lot of times, what we see is that we break up and split and have divisions and grudges for things that are so insignificant. Right? Let's not even think about like the greater Muslim Ummah. I mean, even within our own very communities, one center. One day everybody is, all on the same page. The next day it's, a big fight and one thing happens and you're being pulled in two different directions. There's a hadith by Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He says, it's narrated that he said, لا يفترق رجلان على الحجران إلا استوجب أحدهما البراءة واللعنة ورب استحق كلاهما. He says that two people never enter into a dispute and fight except that it becomes compulsory upon one of them both the distancing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His curse. And it says sometimes it happens to both of them. He says, and it continues and says, then sometimes the person complains. He's like, the one that was being like, let's say that there was one that was oppressed. The one that was oppressed complained like, why am I being punished? That person did something wrong to me. Imam continues, says that, well, because you didn't go and try to resolve this difference. You didn't go and try to resolve this difference. You didn't even speak to that brother after this thing happened. And so maybe both of you will be cursed. Both the one that did the dhulm and oppression and the madhlum. Why? Because the madhlum also did dhulm. Because they didn't swallow their pride and go and try to resolve that conflict. The Imam continues. He says what the madhlum should say is he should go up to the zalim, the madhlum, the one who is zalim, the oppressor, and tell him that I was the zalim. And the rights we have over each other are at that level. If we don't look and perceive each other to be on the same direction, heading to that same goal, ultimate goal, then we never have that motivation to move past these slights that we see. time is limited. I wanted to mention a few other things. Mention very, very briefly. One of the things that we see that causes a lot of the splits within communities boils down to practices and customs, especially in the time of Muharram. If you're not doing matam in a particular way, if you're not doing, reciting the Masa'ib in a particular way, then that causes differences. The whole point of commemorating Imam Hussain is to become attached to that caravan and becoming a part of it. Look at the beautiful unity within that caravan, in which there were people who are not Shia, there were people who are not Muslim, and yet they gathered under one banner. We have to stand up for that kind of principle. We don't have many accounts of what Imam Hussein's last will to Imam Zain al-Abidin is. But we do have an account of is Imam Zain al-Abidin's last will to Imam Baqir. Within that, he says that I'm going to give and say in my will to you what my father said to me. And so from that way, we have some glimpse of what Imam Hussain said to him. What is one of those lines? He says, "Isbar ala al-haq wa in kana murra." Says, be patient, be steadfast on the path of the truth, even if it's bitter. That's the spirit of Karbala. That's the spirit of hayhat minna dhilla. We should be examining ourselves from top to bottom and finding that dhilla that's within us and trying to remove it. And sometimes, yes, sometimes that dhilla is in the form of practices and customs that have been passed down and that we're used to. And yes, it takes courage to go against that. And yes, I'm not saying that you go and blast people and sort of start a fight. No, you do it lovingly, you do it calmly, you do it respectfully, you do it wisely, in the right place, the right time. But you still do it. You take that stance. If that's what's needed, you do it. Inshallah, we can spend a few moments remembering the Masa'ib of Abu Abdullah and Hussein. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Dear brothers and sisters, in this short ziyarah, what we're saying is that as long as we remain, as long as the night and the day remain, let this not be the last time that we send our salams. So let's say our salams again. Assalamu ala al-Husayn wa ala Ali ibn al-Husayn wa ala awlad al-Husayn wa ala ashab al-Husayn. Dear brothers and sisters, in the caravan of Imam Hussain, there are people of many different ages. There are people from different walks of life who have come and joined. And to some extent, when you look at the martyrs in Karbala, you could picture and envision them on the battlefield fighting. Even if it might be sad to see an old man fighting, even if it might be sad to see a young boy fighting, you could still envision it happening. But there's a shaheed, there's a martyr that can't be seen on the battlefield. There's a shaheed that isn't envisionable and can't be imagined there, has no place there. السلام على الطفل الصغير. السلام على طفل الرضيع. السلام على طفل العطشان. A time comes on the battlefield when a Muslim looks to the left and the right and there's no one left. He says, هل من ذاب يضب عن حرم رسول الله؟ هل من موحد يخاف الله فينا? Is there no defender that can defend the haram of Rasulullah? Is there no muwahid who fears Allah among us? He receives no response. It's narrated that he turns to the tents, hearing the wails of the women in response to his calls. He says to Zainab, bring me my young son. He takes out his son. It's narrated that he goes towards the battlefield and he tells them, if you think I've done some sin, punish me. But what has this young infant done to you? At least give him some water. One of the accounts says that he puts Ali ibn Asghar onto the sand and it describes this infant as gasping, as a fish out of water gasps. He receives no response. He picks up this infant. And suddenly he feels something impacting him. He looks down. He looks down to see that his neck has been pierced from ear to ear with an arrow. He fills his hands with blood and throws it to the sky. He says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, هون علي ما أنزل بي أنه بعين الله. The only thing that's made this easy, possible for me to bear, is that you are witnessing this. In some narrations after that he's confused. Abdullah doesn't know where to take his body. He goes back and forth, saying, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un, ridan bi qadaihi wa tasliman lahu. What must be going through the heart of Abu Abdullah in this moment? What can he say to the mother of this? That he went for water and got the answer of it. على لعنة الله القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون.
Dig a grave with your sword, Hussein. Dig a grave with your sword, Hussein. She is proud of her son today. Difficult, but by God for you. Dry lips are a small price to pay. You throw his blood towards the sky. Eulogies are his lullaby. You throw his lips towards the sky. Eulogies are his lullaby. La ara al-maut illa as-saada. La hayata illa ash-shahada. La hayata shahada. La ara al-maut لا حياة إلا الشهادة لا حياة. You throw his blood towards the sky. Eulogies are his lullaby. لا أرى الموت إلا الشهادة. This land will never be a cradle. This land will never be a cradle. Its sand won't be soft for my baby. This land will never be a cradle. Its sand won't be soft for my baby. The ground is cold and won't be able to wrap my child with its mercy. His eyes want to see the flag bearer, his cry. The heart says no, he's now a martyr. Ya Hussein, 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 Ya This land will never be a cradle. Its sand won't be soft for my baby. The ground is cold and won't be able to wrap my child with its mercy. His eyes want to see the flag bearer, His cries echo loud from the river to the river. The hearts of the angels, they shivered, because they hear him from the river to the river. He was a bud, now he's a flower. They bloom so fast, now he's a martyr. He was a bud, now he's a flower. They bloom so fast, now he's a martyr. A martyr. Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein. He needs an embrace, not an arrow. My Ali was sleeping, you woke him. He needs an embrace, not an arrow. My Ali was sleeping, you woke him. A throat that that is small and narrow. Harmala, 3 prongs will choke him. Oh sky, why do you rain down fire? Where's the water? Oh sky, why do you rain down fire? Where's the water? Oh earth, can you make your land broader? Broader. This grave is tight just like a prison. Prison. He wants freedom from the river. The river. He was a bud, now he's a flower. They bloom so fast, now he's a martyr. He was a bud, now he's a flower. They bloom so fast, now he's a martyr. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. Can everyone see that he's headless? No headline or coverage needed. Can everyone see that he's headless? No headline or coverage needed. They said there are 2 sides in all this. You still can't decide, but he did. The flag is still up, arms are severed. Throats are still dry, but they're not tired. I let his blood flow on the ground to make a pathway. Mahdi will avenge from the river. The river. He was a bud, now he's a flower. They bloom so fast, now he's a martyr. He was a bud, now he's a flower. They bloom so fast, now he's a martyr. Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Aja asghe, aja asghe, aja asghe, aja asghe. असगर मैं तेरी माँ हूँ, असगर मैं तेरी माँ हूँ। आ जाओ चांद मेरे, तेरी प्यास मैं बुझाऊँ। असगर मैं तेरी माँ हूँ, आ जाओ चांद मेरे, तेरी प्यास मैं बुझाऊँ। असगर मैं तेरी माँ हूँ, आ जाओ चांद मेरे, तेरी प्यास मैं बुझाऊँ। असगर मैं तेरी माँ हूँ। मेरे लाडले कहाँ हो, मेरे लाडले कहाँ हो, सीने तुम्हें लगाऊं। असगर मैं तेरी माँ हूँ, आ जाओ चांद मेरे, तेरी प्यास मैं बुझाऊं। असगर मैं तेरी माँ हूँ, आ जाओ चांद मेरे,
تیری پیاس میں بجھاؤں اصغر میں تیری ماں ہوں آ جاؤ چاند میرے تیری پیاس میں بجھاؤں اصغر میں تیری ماں بیٹا تمہارا قاتل میرے سامنے کھڑا ہے جانے کیوں ہنس رہا ہے چادر بھی لٹ چکی ہے منہ کس طرح چھپاؤں اصغر میں تیری ماں ہوں آ جاؤ چاند میرے تیری پیاس میں بجھاؤں اصغر میں تیری ماں ہوں آ جاؤ چاند میرے تیری پیاس میں بجھاؤں تیرے جھولے کو سکینہ رو رو کے چومتی ہے تجھے گھر میں ڈھونڈتی ہے تیری موت کی خبر میں کیسے اسے سناؤں اصغر میں تیری ماں ہوں آ جاؤ چاند میرے تیری پیاس میں بجھاؤں اصغر میں تیری ماں ہوں آ جاؤ چاند میرے تیری پیاس میں بجھاؤں اصغر میں تیری ماں ہوں آ جاؤ چاند میرے تیری پیاس میں بجھاؤں میری جان جا رہی ہے یہ سوچ سوچ اصغر اس پھول سے گلے پر یہ تیر کیسے جھیلا بہنوں کو کیا بتاؤں اصغر میں تیری ماں ہوں آ جاؤ چاند میرے تیری پیاس میں بجھاؤں اصغر میں تیری ماں ہوں آ جاؤ چاند میرے تیری پیاس میں بجھاؤں اصغر میں تیری ماں نیزے سے گر رہا ہے ننھا سا سر تمہارا دل روتا ہے ہمارا میرے ہاتھ تو بندھے ہیں سر کس طرح اٹھاؤں اصغر میں تیری ماں ہوں آ جاؤ چاند میرے تیری پیاس میں بجھاؤں اصغر میں تیری ماں ہوں آ جاؤ چاند میرے تیری پیاس میں بجھاؤں اصغر میں تیری ماں ہوں آ جاؤ چاند میرے تیری پیاس میں بجھاؤں اصغر میں تیری ماں جب رات ہوگی رن میں ہو جائے گا اندھیرا ڈرنا نہیں ہے بیٹا دادی کہیں گی تم سے آ میں تجھے سلاؤں اصغر میں تیری ماں ہوں آ جاؤ چاند میرے تیری پیاس میں بجھاؤں اصغر میں تیری ماں ہوں آ جاؤ چاند میرے تیری پیاس میں بجھاؤں اصغر میں تیری ماں ہوں تم رات کو ہمیشہ سنتے تھے ماں سے لوری اب نیند آتی ہوگی پھر گود میں لٹا کر ناد علی سناؤں اصغر میں تیری ماں ہوں آ جاؤ چاند میرے تیری پیاس میں بجھاؤں اصغر میں تیری ماں ہوں آ جاؤ چاند میرے تیری پیاس میں بجھاؤں اصغر میں تیری ماں ہوں آ جاؤ چاند میرے تیری پیاس میں بجھاؤں اصغر میں जब रात होगी रन में हो जाएगा अंधेरा, डरना नहीं है बेटा, दादी कहेंगी तुमसे, आ मैं तुझे सुलाऊं, असगर मैं तेरी माँ हूँ, आ जाओ चांद मेरे, तेरी प्यास मैं बुझाऊं, असगर मैं तेरी माँ हूँ, आ जाओ चांद मेरे, तेरी प्यास मैं बुझाऊं, असगर मैं तेरी माँ हूँ। अबा अब्दुल्ला, लका लब्बैक, लका लब्बैक 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 अबा अब्दुल्ला, लका लब्बैक, हुसैन 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 हुसैन
توجه جعلت السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته، السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء، السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى رضاه، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته، السلام عليك يا صاحب العرش والزمان، الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن إمام الإنس والجان، أجل الله تعالى فرجاك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
I request the brothers to please allow the sisters to head out first, and I request that you all join us for Jamaat Maghrib prayers. Thank you.